Massive stones stand silent across the world, defying explanation. Did ancient giants, spoken of in countless legends, truly build these colossal structures? We are embarking on an adventurous investigation to find the truth. We will sift through global myths, archaeological evidence, and persistent folklore on a journey to separate fact from fiction. You will discover the real story behind humanity's most enduring architectural mysteries. How did primitive cultures move stones that challenge modern machinery? What forgotten knowledge was truly lost to time? What does our desire to believe in giants tell us about our own past? Legends of giants are not confined to a single corner of the world but echo across continents and cultures. The Bible speaks of the Nephilim, towering beings of old, the heroes of renown. Greek myths tell of the Titans, a primal race of immense power who warred with the gods. In the frozen north, Norse sagas describe the Jotunn, chaotic forces of nature in giant form. And across the Americas, from the Iroquois to the Paiute, indigenous oral histories are rich with accounts of great and powerful giants who once walked the land. These are not mere stories of big people. They are narratives of colossal beings whose very essence was strength, capable of feats that defied the natural order. They were said to move mountains, to reshape rivers, and to tear rocks from the earth with their bare hands. This shared imagery of earth-shaping power is what forges the first, most intuitive link to the megaliths. When you stand before a wall of stones, each one weighing as much as a house, the mind searches for a builder of proportionate scale. The global consistency of these giant lore begs a question. Were these myths simply humanity's way of explaining the inexplicable, a personification of earthquakes and volcanoes? Or could they be a fragmented, exaggerated memory of something more tangible, a race of beings whose physical reality made the impossible seem mundane? The legends set a formidable stage, attributing the world's most ancient and enduring monuments to forces beyond our current understanding. These ancient stone wonders are known as megaliths, a word that simply means very large stones. But these are not just random boulders, they are colossal stones, often left rough and unfinished, deliberately arranged into structures that have endured for thousands of years. From the iconic, towering circle of Stonehenge on the English plains to the impossibly perfect pyramids of Giza in Egypt, these sites capture our imagination. Yet their mystery only deepens when you realize they are a global phenomenon. In the French countryside, the Karnak stones stretch for miles, thousands of immense pillars standing in eerie, parallel rows like a petrified army. On the remote, isolated Easter Island, the massive, brooding Moai statues gaze inland with stoic faces, each one carved and transported across the island with unknown methods. This is the true scale of the puzzle. How did cultures with no contact with one another, separated by vast oceans and continents, all arrive at the same profound idea to build with such monumental scale? What common thread, what shared impulse or forgotten knowledge led humanity to express itself in stone on such a colossal level? The very existence of these structures in every corner of the world forces us to reconsider what ancient peoples were truly capable of. Stonehenge presents a physical problem that defies simple answers. The largest of its stones, the sarcens, are colossal. Each one stands over 20 feet tall and weighs an average of 25 tons, with the biggest tipping the scales at a staggering 50 tons. That is the weight of a fully loaded semi-truck, lifted and balanced with impossible precision. Then there are the blue stones, the smaller inner circle of rocks. Their mystery is not their size, but their journey. These stones were transported over 140 miles from the Preseli Hills in Wales all the way to the Salisbury Plain. How do you move a multi-ton block of stone across rivers, through forests, and over mountains without the wheel, without metal tools, and without draft animals stronger than a dog? The placement of these stones reveals another layer of genius. The great sarcens were shaped with sophisticated joints. Massive tenons were carved on the tops of the upright stones, fitting perfectly into mortise holes carved into the lintels that sit across them. This is woodworking technique, but executed on an unimaginable scale in unforgiving stone. This is not a haphazard pile of rocks. It is a precision-engineered structure that has withstood thousands of years of English weather. The ongoing debate among archaeologists and engineers is fierce. Some propose elaborate systems of ropes, sledges, and log rollers, fueled by the sheer muscle power of hundreds of people. Others suggest that the builders understood the landscape intimately, perhaps even moving the bluestones by glacier or by raft along the coast. Every theory has its flaws, every experiment reveals new questions. When you confront the raw physicality of Stonehenge, the sheer tonnage and the mind-boggling logistics, the legend of giants does not seem like a fanciful myth. It feels like a very human attempt to answer a very practical question. How could anyone but a being of immense primal strength have possibly done this? Yet even Stonehenge pales in comparison to the ultimate megalithic challenge, the Great Pyramid of Giza. This is a structure of such staggering scale and precision that it has consumed the imagination of the world for millennia. The numbers alone are almost incomprehensible. It is built from an estimated 2,300,000 individual blocks of limestone and granite. The average weight of each block is 2.5 tons, roughly the weight of a large sedan. But many of the blocks used in the inner chambers and the outer casing weigh between 50 and 80 tons. To put that in perspective, that is the weight of a fully loaded commercial airplane. Now, imagine moving millions of these stones, not just a few hundred feet, but from quarries often miles away. The logistical nightmare begins with the quarrying itself. How do you cut such massive stones from the bedrock with only copper chisels and stone hammers, tools that seem laughably inadequate for the task? Then comes the transport. The leading theory suggests workers used massive sledges dragged over wet sand to reduce friction, moving perhaps one block at a time in a relentless, grueling procession. But the greatest mystery is the lifting. How did they raise these multi-ton blocks hundreds of feet into the air, placing them with near-perfect alignment? The sides of the pyramid are aligned to the 4 cardinal directions with an error of less than 1/15 of a single degree. The base is leveled to within less than an inch. This is a precision we would struggle to achieve with modern laser technology, let alone with ropes, ramps, and human muscle. For centuries, this sheer impossibility has fueled speculation. The official explanations, while plausible in parts, never quite seem to add up to the whole magnificent, impossible truth. When you stand before this mountain of stone, crafted with the precision of a master watchmaker, the idea of ordinary men with ordinary tools feels insufficient. It is this gap between what we know was possible and what we see built that has, for so long, invited visions of superhuman builders, lost advanced knowledge or even guidance from beyond our world. But even the Great Pyramid's colossal blocks are dwarfed by the stones found at a remote temple complex in Lebanon. In the Bekaa Valley stands the ancient site of Baalbek, a place of profound mystery. Here, the Romans built a magnificent temple to Jupiter upon a foundation so massive, so inexplicably grand, that its origins were a puzzle even to them. This foundation platform is constructed from some of the largest worked stones ever shaped by human hands. The most famous of these are the 3 behemoths known as the Trilithon. Each of these stones is an absolute monster, stretching over 62 feet in length, with a height of 14 feet and a depth of 12 feet. Their weight is almost beyond comprehension, with each block estimated to weigh over 800 tons. To put that into perspective, that is the equivalent of 2 fully loaded Boeing 747 jumbo jets, or a small apartment building carved from a single piece of rock. The quarry from which these stones were cut lies nearly a mile away from the temple site. This presents an engineering challenge that staggers the mind even today. How do you move an 800-ton block of solid limestone across uneven terrain? Modern construction relies on hydraulic cranes and multi-wheeled transporters, machines specifically designed for such Herculean tasks, and even they would strain under this load. The ancient builders had none of this. The precision of their placement is another layer of the enigma. These titanic blocks were lifted over 20 feet in the air and fitted together so perfectly that you cannot slip a razor blade between them. This is a level of joinery we associate with fine cabinetry, not with stones heavier than any military tank. The logistical nightmare of quarrying, transporting, and positioning just one of these stones would be the project of a lifetime. The platform at Baalbek contains more than 3. This is not just construction, it is a statement, a demonstration of power and knowledge so advanced that its methods remain one of history's most enduring and silent secrets. High on a plateau overlooking the ancient Inca capital of Cusco, a fortress wall defies every conventional understanding of stonework. Sacsayhuamán is not built with blocks, but with a jigsaw puzzle of colossal, irregular stones. Each piece of this granite puzzle is a behemoth, some weighing over 100 tons, and their shapes are wildly diverse. They are not uniform rectangles, but polygonal masses with multiple angles and curved faces. Yet, against all logic, these gigantic, misshapen stones fit together with a seamless, interlocking perfection that has baffled observers for centuries. The joints are so incredibly tight that you cannot force a single piece of paper or even the blade of a razor between them. This was all accomplished without a single drop of mortar. The entire immense structure relies entirely on the genius of its fit, a perfect balance of gravity and geometry that has withstood centuries of earthquakes. How could the Inca, without iron tools or the wheel, have achieved such an impossible fit? The process of shaping just one of these stones with stone hammers is almost unimaginable. It would require endless, patient pecking to slowly wear the granite down, but that method alone cannot explain the precision. To get 2 such massive, irregular stones to align so perfectly, you would need to constantly test the fit, lifting and lowering the multi-ton block over and over again. It is a process that seems to demand an impossible amount of time and an almost supernatural patience. The walls curve and weave with stones that have as many as 12 distinct sides, all locking into their neighbors. This is not simple stacking. It is a form of 3-dimensional masonry so advanced that it actually makes the structure more resilient. During an earthquake, while a wall of rectangular blocks might crack and collapse, these interlocking stones merely shift and then settle back into place, a brilliant ancient solution to a modern problem. The mystery of Sacsayhuamán is not one of brute force, but of finesse. It forces us to ask what forgotten techniques, what profound understanding of stone and form, allowed the Inca to mold these mountains as if they were soft clay. Deep in the hills of Turkey, a discovery was made that shattered the very foundations of human history. Göbekli Tepe is not just another ancient site, it is a deliberate, profound anomaly. This complex of massive, circular stone structures, carved with intricate images of animals and abstract symbols, was built over 11,000 years ago. That is 6,000 years older than Stonehenge, and a staggering 7,000 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza was even a concept. This single fact forces a complete rewrite of the conventional story. According to everything we thought we knew, this was the Stone Age, a time when humans were simple hunter-gatherers, living in small, nomadic bands focused solely on survival. They were not supposed to be capable of this. They were not supposed to organize hundreds of workers, to quarry and transport 16-ton pillars of limestone from local quarries, and to erect them in precise, purposeful circles. The sheer scale of the labor implies a social organization, a hierarchy, and a shared belief system that archaeologists never attributed to people of this era. Göbekli Tepe was not a settlement, not a village. It was a temple, a ceremonial center of staggering ambition, built by people who were not yet farmers. This turns the traditional narrative on its head. For decades, the dominant theory was that agriculture came first, providing the surplus food and stable communities that then allowed for the development of complex religion and monumental architecture. But here, the architecture came first. The building of Göbekli Tepe may have been the very catalyst that forced hunter-gatherers to settle down, to invent agriculture to feed the armies of workers constructing this sacred place. So who were these builders? The official explanation is that they were prehistoric hunter-gatherers, yet the site itself seems to mock the limitations of that label. The pillars are T-shaped, some believe they are stylized human forms, and they are covered in beautifully carved reliefs of foxes, scorpions, lions, and vultures. This is not crude graffiti, it is sophisticated art and symbolism, demanding a level of abstract thought and cultural unity we did not believe existed. The precision with which these stones were set, the clear astronomical alignment some researchers have detected, all point to a sophisticated understanding of the world. This creates a troubling gap in our history. If it was not the hunter-gatherers we imagine, then who? The lack of any obvious settlement nearby, the fact that the site was deliberately and carefully buried around 8000 BC, preserving it perfectly for millennia, only deepens the mystery. It feels like a message from a forgotten age, a civilization that rose and fell long before what we call civilization even began. When you confront a mystery of this magnitude, one that predates all other known megalithic wonders by millennia, the question naturally shifts. If the conventional story of human progress is wrong, what other stories, what other possibilities might we have to reconsider? Northern Ireland's coastline holds a formation so geometrically perfect it seems deliberately built. The Giant's Causeway stretches out into the sea as a pavement of over 40,000 interlocking basalt columns, most of them forming near-perfect hexagons. They fit together with such precision that the entire area looks like the ruins of a colossal, sunken temple or a cobblestone road laid for titans. It is a breathtaking sight, one that feels utterly artificial. This very quality fueled a rich local legend, a story that explains the causeway as the work of an Irish giant named Fionn mac Cumhaill. As the tale goes, Fionn built this pathway across the sea to Scotland to confront his rival, the Scottish giant Benandina. It is a classic myth, born from the human need to personify and explain a landscape that defies simple understanding. How else could such a perfectly patterned stone pavement exist, if not by the hand of a being of immense power? The legend provides a satisfying, human-scale answer to a deeply mysterious sight. Yet the truth revealed by geology is in its own way just as magnificent. This incredible structure is not the work of giants, but of nature's own patient, violent artistry. The columns were formed from a massive flow of molten basalt lava that cooled and contracted with incredible slowness and uniformity. As it solidified, it fractured not randomly, but into these stunning polygonal shapes, much like mud drying in the sun cracks into a network of patterns. This process, known as columnar jointing, created one of the world's most convincing natural illusions. The Giant's Causeway stands as a powerful object lesson. Here we have a phenomenon that looks for all the world like a megalithic construction, complete with fitted stones and a purposeful layout, yet it was shaped by purely natural forces. It demonstrates with perfect clarity how our ancestors, lacking the framework of modern geology, would look upon a mysterious and imposing stone structure, and their minds would leap to the most logical explanation available to them. If this natural formation could so perfectly mimic the work of master builders, then how many other ancient sites whose origins are lost to time might also have simpler explanations we have yet to consider? This is the enduring tension at the heart of our mystery, the delicate balance between the epic legends we want to believe and the quiet, often more complex, truths of the past. Long after the stones were set, medieval scribes picked up their pens to write the history of their lands. They looked upon the same silent, colossal ruins that puzzle us today, and they saw a clear and certain answer written in the weathered rock. Giants, for these chroniclers, the existence of a primordial race of immense beings was not a fringe myth. It was a matter of historical fact, the only logical explanation for the impossible architecture that surrounded them. One of the most influential of these writers was a Welsh cleric named Geoffrey of Monmouth. In his History of the Kings of Britain, written in the 12th century, he presented a sweeping account of the island's past. And in this history, he offers a very specific origin for Stonehenge. He wrote that the monument was originally built in Africa by a race of giants, who then transported the magical stones to Ireland. Later, the wizard Merlin used his enchantments to disassemble the circle and move it across the sea to Salisbury Plain in England as a memorial for fallen British princes. In Geoffrey's telling, the involvement of Merlin and magic was perfectly plausible, but the foundational work, the actual quarrying and initial construction, was attributed squarely to giants. This was not presented as a folk tale, but as documented history. Geoffrey was far from alone. Across Europe, other learned chroniclers looked at their local megalithic sites and drew the same conclusion. Massive burial mounds were called giants' graves. Strange, towering stones were described as the throwing weapons or the boundary markers of ancient colossal beings. These writers were stitching together the physical evidence of the landscape with the biblical and classical traditions they knew, which spoke of the Nephilim and the Titans. For them, the giants were a real, historical population that had been wiped out by a more civilized human race. Their immense works remained as the only testament to their lost era. This was mainstream historical thought for centuries. The past was not seen as a linear progression from primitive to advanced, but as a cycle of rises and falls, of lost worlds and forgotten peoples whose capabilities might have far exceeded their own. The stones were the proof, so when we today wonder why the idea of ancient giants is so persistent, we must remember that for 1,000 years of recorded European history, it was not a wild speculation. It was the official story, written in ink on vellum by the most respected historians of their age. Their certainty forces us to ask a difficult question. Were they simply doing the best they could with the knowledge they had, or were they preserving a deeper, more ancient truth that modern science has since dismissed? Across the Atlantic, a similar story was unfolding in the forests and along the rivers of North America. As European settlers pushed inland, they encountered landscapes transformed by enormous earthen mounds, some shaped into perfect cones, others into the sprawling forms of serpents and birds. These were not random hills, but clearly artificial structures of immense age and unknown purpose. Confronted with these silent, grassy pyramids and effigies that covered entire valleys, the settlers faced a historical dilemma. They could not, or would not, believe that the Native American peoples they encountered were the descendants of the master architects who had sculpted the very earth itself. Their own prejudices and the apparent technological gap made such a conclusion unthinkable, so they turned to the same explanatory force their medieval ancestors had: giants. Local indigenous oral traditions were rich with such accounts, which the settlers eagerly adopted and reinterpreted. The Iroquois, for instance, spoke of the Jarjaeo, a race of stone giants who were masters of the earth, capable of moving mountains. Other tribes had legends of the mound builders, a powerful, ancient people of great stature who constructed these earthen wonders before vanishing from the land. For the settlers, these stories were not metaphorical, they were literal history. They served as convenient proof that a separate, non-native, and possibly non-human race was responsible for the mounds. This belief allowed them to sidestep a troubling truth, that the continent they were claiming was home to a sophisticated, ancient cultural heritage that rivaled their own. It was a narrative of a lost, superior civilization, wiped out by the more primitive tribes, which in turn justified the settlers' own displacement of those tribes. They were, in their minds, merely reclaiming a land that had already been lost to its true, original builders. This intellectual dismissal had profound consequences. It fueled centuries of speculation about lost tribes of Israel, Phoenician voyagers, or even survivors from Atlantis, while the living, continuous cultures with their own deep histories were pushed to the margins of the story. The real mystery of the mounds was not who built them, but why we were so determined to believe it could not have been the people who never stopped saying they were here all along. This refusal to listen echoes a much older pattern, a human tendency to look upon the monumental works of the past and see only the hand of the alien, the divine, or the giant, never the brilliant, patient, and entirely human hands of our own ancestors. The idea of ancient giants is not confined to dusty chronicles or local folklore. It is woven directly into the most influential book in human history, the Bible. In the 6th chapter of Genesis, just before the story of Noah's great flood, we find a deeply enigmatic passage. It speaks of the sons of God who saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. The text then states that the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. The word Nephilim is often translated directly as giants, and it is a term that carries immense weight and mystery. Who were these sons of God? Who were the Nephilim? For millennia, scholars and theologians have debated these questions. The most common interpretation is that the sons of God were fallen angels, divine beings who crossed a forbidden boundary, and that their hybrid offspring, the Nephilim, were a race of superhuman giants. Their very existence is presented as a corruption of the natural order, one of the primary reasons God decided to send the flood to cleanse the world. This narrative creates a powerful theological link between giants and a lost antediluvian world, a time before the Great Deluge when the earth was fundamentally different. Some ancient Jewish texts, known as the Apocrypha, expand on this story with vivid detail. The Book of Enoch, for instance, describes these fallen angels, called the Watchers, as imparting forbidden knowledge to humanity, secrets of metalworking, sorcery, and astrology. This theme of lost, advanced knowledge is a perfect match for the megalithic mystery. Could the construction of the world's oldest and most impossible stone structures be the physical legacy of this forbidden wisdom? The logic of this interpretation is compelling. If a race of giants born of divine and human lineage possessed superhuman strength and advanced knowledge, then the construction of Baalbek or the Great Pyramid becomes not just possible but expected. Their disappearance is then explained by the global cataclysm of the flood, a divine judgment that wiped them from the face of the earth, leaving only their colossal, silent ruins as a testament to their power and their sin. This is not just a story, it is a complete historical and theological framework that explains both the how and the why of these ancient wonders. It answers the question of who built them and also the haunting question of why they are all that remains of that forgotten age. When you read these ancient texts with the megaliths in mind, the pieces of the puzzle seem to click into place with a terrifying symmetry. The stones become the evidence for the scripture, and the scripture becomes the explanation for the stones. This powerful loop of faith and fact has convinced many that we are not just looking at the work of primitive humans, but at the scorched earth of a war between heaven and earth, a war whose only survivors are the stones themselves. Mainstream archaeology offers a powerful counter-narrative to the legends of giants and lost civilizations, one built entirely on the foundation of human ingenuity. This perspective argues that the ancients achieved the impossible not through supernatural strength, but through an intimate understanding of physics, immense social organization, and relentless coordinated effort. The evidence for this is etched into the stones themselves. At the quarries in Aswan, Egypt, or the Preseli Hills in Wales, we find clear tool marks from stone hammers and dolerite pounding stones. We find abandoned obelisks and partially cut blocks that show the methods in progress, frozen in time. These are not the workshops of gods or giants, but of human beings, patiently and methodically pecking away at the stone. The real magic, according to archaeologists, was not in the tools, but in the application of simple machines and the power of collective labor. The theory of the ramp is the most famous solution for the pyramids. Researchers propose massive, spiraling ramps of mud brick and rubble, rising along the sides of the structure, up which teams of workers could drag stone blocks on wooden sledges. The key to making this work was friction reduction. Experiments have shown that wetting the sand in front of a sledge dramatically decreases the pulling force required, turning a near-impossible task into a difficult but manageable one. For moving the colossal stones of Baalbek, the theories become even more ingenious. Some suggest a system of massive lever and fulcrum points, using the principle of mechanical advantage to nudge the stones incrementally forward. Others propose a system of wooden rollers, essentially creating a temporary road of logs over which the stone could be painstakingly rolled. The transport of Stonehenge's bluestones might have involved a combination of land and water routes, with the stones hauled onto wooden rafts and floated along rivers and the coastline, a monumental logistical feat that relied on a deep knowledge of the landscape and seasons. The true engine behind all these theories, however, was not a machine but people. The construction of the Great Pyramid is thought to have required a workforce of thousands, not slaves as once believed, but likely skilled laborers and farmers who worked during the inundation season when the Nile flooded their fields. These were organized, rotated crews, housed and fed in nearby worker villages whose ruins have been excavated. They were motivated by a powerful belief system, a shared faith in their god-king, and the afterlife that gave profound meaning to their back-breaking toil. This was a society that could marshal its entire population toward a single, generational goal. The sheer scale of the human effort is, in its own way, as staggering as the legend of giants. It means that these wonders were not built by mysterious, superhuman beings, but by the calloused hands, clever minds, and coordinated will of countless ordinary people. Yet, even with all this compelling evidence, a nagging question remains. Does the sheer, patient genius of humanity fully explain the impossible precision and the global consistency of these ancient marvels? Or does the legend of the giants point to a deeper, more forgotten truth about our own past? The 20th century holds its own megalithic mystery, one built not by a civilization but by a single man. In the humid Florida landscape, an immigrant from Latvia named Edward Leedskalnin accomplished a feat that seems to defy all known physics. Working entirely alone and mostly at night, he quarried, carved, and erected over 1,100 tons of solid coral rock. He called his creation rock Gate Park, though the world now knows it as Coral Castle. The structures are monumental, featuring enormous, perfectly balanced stone gates, towering obelisks, and massive rocking chairs, all carved from the same dense material. The centerpiece was a 9-ton revolving gate, so perfectly balanced on a simple truck bearing that a child could push it open with a single finger. This was not ancient history, this happened within living memory, yet the method behind the madness remains a complete secret. When asked how he managed such a thing, Leedskalnin would only offer a cryptic smile and say he understood the laws of weight and leverage. He claimed to have rediscovered the building secrets of the ancient pyramids. This modern enigma is a haunting echo of the older mysteries. If one 5-foot-tall, 100-pound man could single-handedly manipulate multi-ton blocks of stone, what does that say about the potential of lost knowledge? Leedskalnin's tools were primitive, little more than old car parts, chains, and simple tripods. He left no blueprints, no journals explaining his process. Eyewitnesses were few and saw only the results, not the work itself. The most persistent theory is that he had somehow rediscovered an ancient acoustic technology, using sound waves to neutralize gravity or soften stone, a concept found in many esoteric traditions. Others believe he mastered a form of magnetic levitation. His story is so compelling because it is a modern, documented parallel to the ancient puzzles. It suggests that the secret to building the world's megaliths may not have been supernatural strength, but a forgotten science, a simple yet profound understanding of natural forces that we have since lost. This single man's quiet, obsessive work in a Florida field powerfully implies that the giants of legend may not have been literal titans of flesh and blood, but could have been human beings who possessed a titan's knowledge. Perhaps the true giants of the past were not beings of immense stature, but masters of a forgotten science. This line of inquiry shifts the mystery from who built the megaliths to how they could have been built using principles that seem to border on magic. One of the most persistent and fascinating theories involves the power of sound. Imagine a culture that understood the vibrational nature of matter itself. Legends from across the ancient world speak of stones being moved by chants, by the blowing of trumpets, or the striking of specific tones. The idea is that every object has a natural resonant frequency, a specific pitch at which it will vibrate most strongly. Proponents of acoustic levitation suggest that if the ancients could generate and amplify this precise frequency, they could theoretically cancel out the effects of gravity, making a multi-ton block as light as a feather. The stone would float on a cushion of its own vibration, guided effortlessly into place. This is not pure fantasy. Modern experiments with acoustic levitation can suspend small droplets of water in midair using carefully tuned sound waves. Scaling this up to the size of a pyramid block seems impossible with our current technology. But what if a lost civilization had perfected this art? Another compelling technological theory revolves around a profound manipulation of Earth's own energies. Some researchers point to the specific placement of megalithic sites, often situated on powerful geological fault lines or atop concentrated magnetic anomalies. Could the builders have tapped into this terrestrial power, using some form of crystal or tuned stone apparatus to create localized anti-gravity fields? The concept suggests they understood a unified field theory long before Einstein, viewing gravity not as an immutable force, but as a field that could be manipulated, much like magnetism. This would explain the movement of the Baalbek stones or the precise placement of pyramid blocks, not as feats of brute force, but as exercises in applied Earth energy. Then there is the simpler, yet equally mysterious idea of a lost chemical knowledge. Various myths and alchemical texts refer to a substance that could soften stone, turning granite into a pliable, clay-like material. The Incan walls of Sacsayhuamán, with their seemingly melted and fused joints, are often cited as potential evidence for this. If a plant-based solvent or a chemical compound could temporarily alter the crystalline structure of rock, it would make the perfect shaping and fitting of multi-sided blocks a much more manageable task. The stones could be molded into place, and then, once the compound wore off, they would harden back into their original, indestructible state, locking together for millennia. These theories of lost technology all serve a single, powerful purpose. They attempt to close the gap between the overwhelming physical evidence of the megaliths and the perceived limitations of ancient human capability. They suggest that our ancestors' greatest strength was not in their muscles, but in their minds, possessing a sophisticated physics that has since been erased by time, catastrophe, or simply the slow decay of knowledge. This raises a haunting possibility. What if the real story of human history is not one of steady progress, but of a precipitous fall from a much higher technological peak, leaving us to puzzle over the silent, stone wreckage of a world we can no longer comprehend? This search for tangible proof has led many down a path littered with giant bones. 19th century newspapers were filled with sensational accounts of farmers plowing up enormous skeletons, or of workmen uncovering giant graveyards. The Cardiff giant is perhaps the most famous example, a 10-foot-tall stone man unearthed on a New York farm in 1869. It was a marvel that captivated the public, drawing thousands of paying spectators until it was revealed to be an elaborate hoax, a block of gypsum carved and aged with acid. But not all cases were deliberate fakes. Many resulted from simple misinterpretation. When a large, unfamiliar bone is found, the human mind tries to fit it into a recognizable shape. A massive femur might be seen as a human leg bone. A collection of mastodon vertebrae strung together could be mistaken for a gigantic human spine. Without the framework of modern paleontology, these finds were instantly labeled as the remains of the biblical Nephilim or the mythical Titans. Even well-meaning archaeologists of the era, working with crude methods, could incorrectly reconstruct a skeleton, piecing together fragments from different animals or even different species to form a single, impossibly large human form. These misidentified fossils and manufactured hoaxes created a powerful, self-reinforcing cycle. The public expected to find giants, so when a strange bone was discovered, it was immediately framed as such. The newspapers, eager for sales, printed the stories without skepticism, and each new report seemed to validate the older legends, creating the illusion of a mountain of physical evidence. Yet when subjected to modern scientific scrutiny, not a single verified giant skeleton has ever been held up. The claims crumble under the weight of carbon dating, DNA analysis, and proper anatomical study. So why does this idea persist with such fervor? It speaks to a profound human desire to hold the proof in our hands, to have a physical body that confirms the stories. We want the legend to be real, to be something we can see and measure. The absence of that proof, however, forces a deeper and more challenging question. If the giants were not literal, flesh and blood beings whose bones we can unearth, then what powerful truth were these ancient stories and impossible structures truly trying to convey? The stubborn appeal of the giant theory reveals a deep and very human need for narrative closure. We are confronted by these silent, impossible structures, and our minds instinctively rebel against the unsatisfying answer of maybe we do not know. The idea that a race of colossal beings simply built them is profoundly simple. It provides a complete and emotionally resonant solution to a puzzle that otherwise demands we grapple with the complexities of ancient logistics, the slow accumulation of knowledge, and the sheer, patient effort of thousands of forgotten people. A giant is a perfect, single-cause explanation. It is far more compelling than a decades-long, muddy, and grueling communal project that leaves no room for magic or mystery. This desire for a lost golden age, for a time when the world was more epic and its inhabitants more powerful, is a timeless human impulse. The giant myth feeds a nostalgia for a past that never was, a world where heroes and monsters shaped the landscape, a story that feels grander than the slow, anonymous crawl of actual history. Modern media and the internet have supercharged this innate tendency. A sensational headline about a discovered giant skeleton travels across social media in hours, while a careful, peer-reviewed archaeological paper debunking the claim remains read by only a handful of specialists. The algorithms that shape our online experiences are designed to favor engagement, and mystery, conspiracy, and the overturning of established history are incredibly engaging. We find ourselves in digital echo chambers where the giant theory is not a fringe idea but a dominant narrative, reinforced by countless videos, blog posts, and online communities that all share the same compelling evidence, often recycled from old hoaxes and misidentifications we thought were long settled. This digital ecosystem thrives on a growing cultural sentiment, a deep-seated distrust of institutional authority. When experts from universities and museums consistently state that there is no evidence for ancient giants, a segment of the population does not hear cautious scientific rigor. They hear a cover-up. They hear an entrenched academic elite protecting a crumbling version of history that cannot account for the anomalies we all can see with our own eyes. This distrust transforms the giant from a myth into a suppressed truth, a rebel idea fighting against a system that wants to keep humanity's epic past a secret. The stones themselves become the ultimate evidence in this trial against the establishment. You can argue with a carbon date or a geological report, but you cannot argue with the 800-ton block at Baalbek. Its sheer physical presence seems to mock the official story, making the leap to a superhuman builder feel not like a fantasy, but like a logical conclusion. So the theory endures not because of the evidence that supports it, but because of the void it fills, offering a story of epic scale for monuments that defy our own. Beyond questions of strength and construction lies an even deeper layer of precision. Scattered across the globe, these ancient stones do more than simply stand. They speak a silent language written in the movements of the heavens. Stonehenge is famously aligned so that on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the rising sun pierces directly through its heart, casting a blade of light across the central altar. This is not a coincidence. Across the ocean, the Great Pyramid of Giza is oriented to the 4 cardinal directions with an accuracy that rivals modern satellite surveys. Its descending passageways were once thought to point directly toward the pole star of its time, a star known to the ancients as Theban. In the jungles of Central America, the Mayan temple of Chichen Itza transforms into a serpent of light and shadow during the equinoxes, as the setting sun creates the illusion of a diamond-backed snake slithering down its massive staircase. These are not isolated incidents but a recurring theme. From the massive stone circles of Nabta Playa in the Sahara, older than Stonehenge itself, to the intricate solar observatories of Machu Picchu high in the Andes, our ancestors repeatedly went to immense effort to encode celestial cycles into their architecture. This shared obsession presents a profound fork in the road of our investigation. Does this universal, sophisticated astronomical knowledge point toward the advanced builders of legend, a culture or group that possessed this wisdom and spread it across the world? Or does it instead represent the absolute pinnacle of human intellectual achievement, proof that ancient minds, through patient generational observation, unlocked the rhythms of the cosmos without any need for outside help? Consider the sheer dedication required. To note the subtle shift in a star's position over a year is one thing, but to track its slow, wobbling cycle over 26,000 years, as some sites suggest, requires a civilization that records and preserves knowledge for centuries. This points to a stable, organized society with priest astronomers who could dedicate their lives to watching the sky, passing their findings down through countless generations. Their motivation was likely a fusion of science and spirit. By predicting the solstices, they could mark the seasons for planting and harvest, a matter of survival. But by building permanent monuments to these events, they were also forging a connection between heaven and earth, anchoring their world to the eternal certainty of the stars. The stones were their calendar, their clock, and their cathedral all in one. So we are left with 2 powerful, competing narratives. One sees this celestial precision as the signature of a lost, advanced civilization, the very giants or their enlightened teachers who imbued these sites with a cosmic purpose we are still deciphering. The other sees it as the ultimate testament to human potential, a global flowering of intelligence that proves our ancestors were every bit as brilliant as we are, their legacy written not on parchment but in stone and sky. The truth may be the most compelling mystery of all, waiting not in the stars themselves, but in the silent, patient stones that still watch them. This silent alignment with the stars hints at a purpose far beyond mere calendars or tombs. Another layer of the mystery suggests these stones were not just observatories but active power plants built upon the very pulse of the earth itself. Enter the world of ley lines, a concept that pushes the mystery into the realm of Earth energy. The theory proposes that our planet is crisscrossed by an invisible grid of energy pathways, lines of natural power flowing through the crust. Proponents of this idea point to a startling pattern. When you map the locations of the world's great megalithic sites, they often appear to fall in startlingly straight lines across hundreds, even thousands of miles. Stonehenge, the Karnak stones, and ancient sacred sites across Europe seem to connect like beads on a string. The Great Pyramid of Giza sits at a nexus of such lines, a proposed global power center. This is not considered a coincidence by those who follow this trail. They argue that the ancient builders possessed a sensitivity to these terrestrial currents, a connection to the planet that modern humanity has largely lost. They chose their building sites not for convenience, but because these were places of concentrated power, vortices of Earth energy. This is where the legend of the giants finds a new, mystical dimension. If such a race existed, perhaps their greatest attribute was not just physical size, but a profound, innate connection to the living Earth. They would have been able to sense these energy lines as clearly as we see a river, instinctively knowing where to build to tap into the planet's greatest reservoirs of force. The construction itself then becomes an act of acupuncture on a planetary scale. The specific placement and shaping of the stones, their crystalline structures and precise geometries, were designed to amplify, channel, and harness this energy. Imagine the Great Pyramids not as tombs, but as massive, sophisticated capacitors storing terrestrial power. Picture Stonehenge as a resonant chamber tuning into the Earth's frequency. The impossibly tight joints of Sacsayhuamán or Baalbek were not just for seismic stability, but to create a continuous circuit, allowing energy to flow unimpeded through the entire structure without leakage. What would this power have been used for? Theories range from the practical to the profound. Perhaps it was a clean, limitless energy source that powered an advanced civilization, a technology that left no fossil fuels behind, only silent stones. Maybe it was used for healing, for spiritual enlightenment, or even for communication across vast distances. This idea transforms the megaliths from passive monuments into active components of a global, ancient power grid, a system that fell silent long ago. While mainstream science dismisses ley lines as pseudoscience, citing a lack of measurable energy and the statistical inevitability of aligning random points on a map, the theory persists because it offers a unified, grand purpose. It connects the dots between disparate cultures and their colossal works, suggesting a shared, forgotten mission to build upon the sacred anatomy of the Earth itself. The question then shifts from how they moved the stones to why they placed them exactly where they did. Were these sites chosen by a race of Earth giants who could feel the planet's heartbeat? And did they build these structures to speak back to the world in a language of energy we are only just beginning to sense? Perhaps the most compelling answer to the megalithic mystery requires no giants at all, only the incredible power of a united human society. Look past the stones for a moment and consider the civilization that built them. These were not scattered bands of hunter-gatherers. They were complex cultures with a strong, centralized authority, likely a priest-king seen as a god on earth. This leader could command the loyalty and labor of thousands, directing them toward a single, sacred goal that transcended any one lifetime. This was not slavery in the brutal sense we imagine, but a form of societal duty, a shared project that gave everyone a role and a purpose. The vision was everything, a collective belief in the afterlife, in appeasing the gods, or in creating a permanent anchor to the cosmos could motivate people to contribute back breaking labor for decades. This was not a job, it was a devotion, a guaranteed path to honor and spiritual reward. The logistics then fall into place not through superhuman strength, but through brilliant organization. Imagine a workforce divided into specialized teams. One group of expert quarrymen knew exactly how to find the perfect stone and initiate the cracks. Another team, the transporters, mastered the physics of sledges, rollers, and levers. A third group, the engineers, understood geometry and alignment, directing the final placement with painstaking accuracy. This was a society functioning like a single, well-oiled machine. The construction of the Great Pyramid, for instance, likely did not rely on a permanent army of slaves, but on a rotating crew of skilled laborers. During the Nile's annual flood, when farming was impossible, thousands of farmers would become builders, paid in food and beer, contributing their labor to a national project that defined their civilization. This seasonal, organized effort could span generations, with knowledge passed from father to son. The monument became a living entity, growing slowly and surely over the reigns of multiple pharaohs. This social organization hypothesis turns the mystery inside out. The true marvel is not the stone, but the society. The real pyramid is the invisible one, made of human cooperation, shared belief, and generational patience. When an entire culture aligns itself toward a single, monumental purpose, moving mountains does not require giants. It only requires the concerted will of countless ordinary hands, each one adding its own small, essential weight to an achievement meant to echo through eternity. The silent, staring moai of Easter Island seem to be the ultimate candidates for a giant's handiwork. Carved from solid volcanic tuff, hundreds of these statues stand up to 33 feet tall and weigh an average of 14 tons. Yet here, more than anywhere else, modern archaeology has pieced together a remarkably clear and human story of their creation, one written not in legend but in the island's very soil. The Rapa Nui people, Polynesian voyagers who settled this remote island, left behind a complete workshop, a trail of clues that leads from the quarry to the final platform. At the volcanic crater of Rono Raraku, you can walk among nearly 400 moai in every stage of completion. Some are still attached to the bedrock, partially carved. Others stand finished, waiting in their niches. The ground is littered with thousands of stone picks made from a hard, dense rock called basalt. These were the primary tools. Experiments have shown that a team of workers using these basalt picks could carve a full-sized statue directly from the mountain face in less than a year. The real mystery was never the carving, but the journey. How did they move these multi-ton giants across miles of rugged, hilly terrain to their coastal altars known as ahu? The answer may be as simple as a clever combination of ropes and human coordination. One compelling theory, supported by successful modern experiments, suggests the islanders used a technique called walking the moai. They would tilt the statue forward, using ropes to rock it from side to side, effectively making the massive stone figure walk itself down a prepared path. A small team, pulling rhythmically on ropes attached to the statue's head and base, could generate a shuffling, upright gait. This method would explain the many moai found abandoned along the ancient roads, some toppled and broken as if they fell during transport. It also accounts for the oral traditions of the Rapa Nui people themselves, which speak of the statues walking to their platforms, powered by mana or spiritual energy. Once at the ahu, the final feat was erection. Again, using nothing more than levers, ropes, and a gradually built pile of stones, they could have raised each moai inch by painstaking inch until it stood upright, gazing inland over the clan's territory. This entire process, from quarry to platform, was a monumental but achievable human endeavor. It did not require superhuman strength, only superhuman patience, organization, and a profound cultural will. The story of the moai is a powerful testament to what a determined, isolated society can accomplish with nothing but stone, rope, and ingenuity. It provides a complete start-to-finish blueprint for how ancient people could have moved mountains, or at least their stone counterparts, all on their own. But the stones themselves hold a different kind of testimony, one written not in legend, but in the microscopic scars of their creation. To understand the builders, we must listen to what the rock has to say. Across the ancient quarries of the world, from the Egyptian deserts to the Welsh hills, the evidence is chiseled into the very bedrock. We find clear, deliberate marks from stone hammers and dolerite pounding stones, the ancient equivalents of a carpenter's chisel. At the Aswan obelisk quarry in Egypt, an unfinished giant still lies attached to the granite, and the channel marks around its base are unmistakable. They were made by teams of workers swinging stone balls on ropes to pound a groove, then driving in wooden wedges that were soaked with water to expand and crack the stone along a precise line. This is not the work of a supernatural force. It is the work of patient, repetitive, and brilliantly applied human labor. The stones themselves bear the fingerprints of their makers, and those fingerprints are human. Beyond the quarries, the structures are often covered in a language of their own. Petroglyphs and intricate carvings adorn many megalithic sites. These are not the doodles of a lost superhuman race, but the symbolic art of the people who built them. The spirals and concentric circles carved into the stones of Newgrange in Ireland, the depictions of animals and hunting scenes on the menhirs of Europe, even the so-called mason's marks found in the pyramids, these all point to a human culture expressing its beliefs, its identity, and its pride in a monumental achievement. They are signatures left behind by the artists and engineers who dedicated their lives to these projects. Modern material science adds another layer of proof. By analyzing the weathering on these stones, geologists can create a timeline. The slow, natural erosion caused by wind and rain leaves a specific signature, and this weathering pattern on the megaliths consistently matches the known archaeological dates for the human cultures associated with them. The wear on the Sarsens at Stonehenge aligns with 4,000 years of British weather, not 10,000. The erosion on the Moai platforms on Easter Island corresponds with the known timeline of Polynesian settlement. There is no geological anomaly that suggests these structures are vastly older than we believe. Furthermore, studies of the construction techniques reveal a clear and logical, if arduous, evolution. We can see the progression from simpler, rougher stone circles to the masterful, interlocking walls of the Inca. This is a story of accumulated knowledge, of trial and error, of one generation of builders learning from the last. It is the story of human ingenuity slowly perfecting its craft over centuries, not a single, impossible moment of creation by mythical beings. The stones, in their silent, enduring way, tell a consistent and compelling story of human hands, human minds, and a patience that spanned generations. We cling to the idea of ancient giants because it makes the past feel epic. This modern folklore offers a narrative of a more dramatic world, a time when heroes and monsters shaped the very ground beneath our feet. The slow, anonymous grind of archaeology, with its patient cataloging of tool marks and ancient pollen, cannot compete with the visceral thrill of a legend. A story about 1,000 ordinary people hauling a stone for a generation is historically plausible, but a tale of a single titan lifting it into place is emotionally resonant. It provides a clean, satisfying answer to a messy, complex question. This need for a grander history fuels entire communities dedicated to alternative history. For many, the giant theory is not a silly myth but a rebellious act. It is a deliberate challenge to what they see as a rigid, unimaginative academic establishment. When experts present evidence of ramps and stone hammers, it can feel like a dismissal of the sheer awe these monuments inspire. The alternative narrative steps into this gap, reframing the mystery as a cover-up and the true builders as a forgotten race whose existence rewrites everything. This transforms the believer from a passive recipient of history into an active investigator uncovering suppressed truths. The stones become proof of a conspiracy of silence, and the legend of the giants becomes a powerful tool to pry the lid off a sealed past. In a world saturated with information, these stories provide a compelling sense of purpose, a secret knowledge that sets the believer apart. The myth endures because it is more than a story about the past. It is a story about our own desire for a world filled with wonder and hidden meaning, a world where the impossible is merely the forgotten. So where does this leave our search for the builders? The evidence presents us with two very different worlds. On one hand, we have the enduring power of legend, a global tapestry of stories that speak of colossal beings whose very existence seems to answer the question of how these stones were moved. On the other, we have the silent, stubborn testimony of the stones themselves, covered in the tool marks of human hands and surrounded by the archaeological footprints of complex, organized societies. When we weigh these possibilities, the giant hypothesis, while emotionally resonant, begins to falter under the sheer weight of physical evidence. No verified giant bones have ever been found. The hoaxes and misidentified fossils that once fueled the fire have been thoroughly debunked by modern science. The legends themselves, while widespread, are exactly the kind of stories that human cultures create to explain the unexplainable, to give a face to the forces that shaped their world long before their time. The true marvel, then, may not be the myth but the reality. The genuine, unresolved mysteries of megalithic construction are not proof of giants but monuments to human potential. We still do not know exactly how the 800-ton blocks of Baalbek were transported nearly a mile. The method for moving Stonehenge's bluestones remains a topic of fierce debate. The precision of the Great Pyramid's alignment continues to baffle engineers. These are not failures of archaeology, but testaments to the sophistication of ancient knowledge, much of which was likely passed down orally and lost to time. The gap in our understanding does not need to be filled with giants. It simply highlights the limits of our own reconstruction. The evidence, when synthesized, points overwhelmingly to a human story. It is a story of social organization on a scale we can scarcely imagine, where a shared belief system could mobilize thousands toward a single generational goal. It is a story of ingenuity where simple machines, an intimate knowledge of physics, and relentless trial and error achieved what looks like magic to our modern eyes. The who is no longer a mystery buried in myth. It was the calloused hands of quarrymen, the keen minds of engineers, and the coordinated strength of communities. They may not have been giants in stature, but in their vision, their patience, and their collective will, they truly were. Our journey through the whispers of giants and the silence of stone has taken us across the globe and deep into the human imagination. We have sifted through ancient myths, marveled at impossible engineering, and listened to the quiet, persistent voice of archaeological evidence. The legend of ancient giants is a story of epic scale, a narrative that satisfies our deepest longing for a more dramatic past. Yet when we look closely at the stones themselves, at the tool marks left by countless hands and the organized ruins of worker villages, the tangible proof points not to mythical titans, but to the titanic potential of humanity itself. The real wonder is not that giants might have built these structures, but that our own ancestors did. They achieved these marvels with nothing but stone, rope, brilliant minds, and a collective will that could move mountains one patient generation at a time. These megaliths stand as the ultimate monument to human cooperation, ingenuity, and the profound desire to create something that would outlast the stars. So the next time you see a picture of these ancient wonders, remember the true giants were the people who built them. What mysteries capture your imagination? Share your favorite megalithic site or your own thoughts on these enduring puzzles in the comments below.